Hey, what's up, guys? This episode is the Nazarite, where Nick talks more about theology while pointing at a whiteboard. So, it was like 2011, 2012, and I was living up in Bellingham, Washington, and I had pretty much like lost faith at that point. And I was miserable, and I was like having a major depressive episode. I was in a lot of pain, and it's kind of like Seattle, Washington is known for being like gloomy and rainy all the time. That's because it's true. It's gloomy and rainy there all the time. So I was like, oh, I'll go to where it's sunny and bright. And my grandmother lived in Tampa, Florida, and it was just like an easy place to go and crash. So I was like, oh, I'll move into my grandmother's house. And she lived on the corner of St. Nicholas and Clark. And when I moved there in 2012, which in the Mayan calendar is when the world ends, I heard about this sign happening, where there was a lunar eclipse on Passover, another lunar eclipse on Sukkot in 2014, and then a solar eclipse over the North Pole, of course, because of the mythology of Santa Claus on the ecclesiastical New Year. And then another lunar eclipse on Passover, and another lunar eclipse on Sukkot. And I heard about the sign happening, and I was living on the street and this intersection, and I was like, trats. Hello? Is anybody there? Oh, weird. Didn't expect that. So I saw this happening, and I was like, I should probably do something, so I wrote the Testament of St. Nicholas and the Book of Santa Claus on Sukkot, because it's the gathering of tabernacles, we're all tabernacling together. And during the sign, there's also some language in Leviticus 25 that points to Yom Kippur during this sign, and a Jubilee being declared. And yeah, so it was about this time, January 1st, 2015. I was thinking about it back here though, like when I wrote the Testament of St. Nick. And I was like, I was poring over the Bible, and I was like, oh, I wonder what happens if I grow my hair out long, if I'll look like Jesus or not. And I found this vow, and part of the vow is no razor used on their head, must grow their hair long. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll take this vow, because I wonder if I look like Jesus or not. And I took the vow, and whoa, I look like Jesus, that's weird. So, okay. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'll walk with you, Lord. I'll take the leap of faith. I'll take the vow. And this is like the basic outline of the vow. It's an extracurricular activity. It's not a required vow. If you choose to take it, you're more than welcome to, but it's not required. If you want to dedicate yourself to the Lord, go for it. So the vow is no wine, no grapes, no fermented drink, no vinegar. As I said before, no razor used on their head, must grow their hair long, and no being around dead bodies. So when my grandmother passed away recently, I didn't go to her funeral because of the vow. This starting out, no grapes, was a pain, because grapes will show up in random places, like in bread and muffins and fruit salad and regular salad, and they're just sneaky. They'll just be in like random places. It's like, whoops. The no fermented drink and no wine was pretty easy, because I was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they're like the Muslims, where they don't drink alcohol. So that was like pretty easy to keep. Although one time I had to divulge some information, and the only way I was going to say it was by getting drunk, so out of necessity, I broke that. This has been a pain. I've broken this accidentally so many times. And also taking this vow has been really humbling, because it makes me realize what flawed creatures we are. Like human beings, we're such flawed creatures, right? This seems easy, but it's actually really hard. I invite you to give it a try. Where like you just like don't have grapes and you don't have vinegar. It's gonna be a lot harder than you think. This is like in a lot of meals at restaurants. And the sauces that they use, it's in barbecue sauce, it's in mustard, ketchup, soy sauce, teriyaki sauce. It's all over the place. This one time I bought some turkey, and I was just like regular turkey, and then it had vinegar in it. I was like, what? It'll be in chips. Like I've done that too, where I've like bought some chips, and then I like look at the packaging, and I was like, oh, there's vinegar in it. That's weird. It's just like all over the place. So this has like been really hard to keep this part. And this has been really easy. And I'm pretty sure that like just driving around, I've like driven by an ambulance with a dead body in it. So I've probably like, I've broken this part, I've broken this part, I've broken this part on purpose, I've broken this part, and I haven't broken that part actually. No wine? Have I drinking any wine? No, I haven't. Interesting. Okay, so instead of like following the vow and like shaving off my hair and stuff and like restarting all over again, I just try to recommit and keep on engaging with it. And that took me to a really interesting place, which we'll get to in a second. This is actually, I would say, prophecy, kind of like hidden and wrapped in a vow, because the Lord is clever. And this is actually playing at a really big problem for humanity. I don't know if it's an existential problem, it could be, but it's definitely like something that we should stop doing, and we should change our ways. And this is the Lord's way of like hinting at it. And definitely drew my attention to it. Yeah, so this part, the no razor used on their head must grow their hair long. Well, okay, so Moses is always depicted with having long hair. And then in the Bible, Samson and Samuel are both documented to have taken this vow. And then Jesus is always depicted with long hair, right? So they're like taking this part. And then Muhammad is also documented to have had long hair and a beard. I actually found out that his beard, they still have his beard. It's like a relic stored somewhere, which is kind of weird. But yeah. Okay, so all these guys are like taking this part of the vow, and it's kind of like hinting at this stuff, right? I'm not sure if Jesus, Muhammad, and Moses actually took it or not, but they definitely took this part. Yeah. Okay, so I took this vow in like 2015, and this took me a while to like put all together. You're definitely like getting the shortcut version of it, because like when I took it, well, like putting this all together and like being like, oh, that's what it's talking about, took a while. It didn't happen like overnight. So this is back in 2015, and it's like almost 2019 now. And it was definitely like a year of me sitting up in North Carolina not doing anything and like thinking about this to get to the answer. So okay, taking this vow drew my attention to this stuff. So okay, grapes, grape juice, raisins, wine, razor. Okay, so when I go to the store, I'm like thinking about this, right? And then when I go to the store, my attention is drawn to this stuff. Like, I can't have ketchup because it has vinegar in it, and I can't have mustard because vinegar, or this stuff. And also when I go out to eat, this is on a lot of the food. So like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, like this is on a lot of the food. So it's like drawing my attention to that stuff, right? Yeah, no beer, no vodka, no rum, no gin, no tequila, no liquor, pretty much. Because they're all fermented. And fermentation causes carbonation. And 3,500 years ago or 2,500 years ago when that was written, they didn't have carbonated beverages. So instead of saying carbonated beverage, which they didn't have back then when that was written, you say hard drink or fermented drink. And then somebody comes along, like me, and is like, okay, fermentation causes carbonation, right? And then this is like a little, just like leap of faith. It's like hinting at this, right? So it's like hinting at like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Sprite, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, and soda products. Okay, so like take the vow, go to the store. My attention is, so I take the vow in faith and belief, and then my thought and attention is drawn to this, and I'm like paying attention to this stuff. Because I'm like walking to the Lord, and I'm like, okay, Lord, why am I paying attention to this stuff? Like, why is this here? Why are you having me pay attention to this stuff? So, what do all of these things have in common? Like everything on this list. What does everything on this board have in common? This took me a while. I already wrote down the answer, but it took me a while to like put this all together and be like, oh, that's what it's talking about. Interesting, that's cool. Oh, that is prohibited. Oh, we're not supposed to be knowing this. That's interesting. Yeah. So it's not all food, right? Because razors are up there, right? So it's not all food. Because razors are up there. So what is it talking about? What is this hinting at? It's not sugar again, because razors, right? Razors are up there. It's not all ferment. It's not all preservatives, because again, razors are up there. Like razors don't preserve anything. So what is this vow hinting at? Like, right? So I take the vow, and the vow like draws my attention to this stuff. And what does all this stuff have in common? It took me like 4 years to figure this out. It's kind of sad. What? Really? Oh, dude. That's awesome. They are all wrapped in plastic. Everything on that list over here is wrapped in plastic. Right? When you go to the store and you look at grapes, you buy some grapes, wrapped in plastic. Grape juice comes in a plastic container, wrapped in plastic. Wine, plastic. Razors are made of plastic, wrapped in plastic. Ketchup, plastic. Mustard, plastic. Barbecue sauce, plastic. Plastic, plastic, plastic. Comes in plastic. Or six-pack, plastic rings. Plastic, 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 plastic. Whoa. And okay, so there's this prediction, which hopefully doesn't come true, that by 2050, there will be as much plastic as fish in the oceans by weight. What? To me, this is like a problem. And we should stop this immediately. It goes back to this. A plastic statue is an idol, a figurine, right? This is an idol. Like this is a little figurine. And then a corporation is a false god, okay? Right? The corporation is the false god. So what do these guys do? Well, they make like little figurines out of plastic, right? And so does Pepsi and Sprite. And do like, right, these two companies make this stuff. It all comes in like little plastic figurines. And that's also what Heinz is doing, right? The false god Heinz makes ketchup containers out of plastic. They come in like little plastic containers, right? That's also this mustard, barbecue sauce, salad dressing, hot sauce, yeah. Grape juice. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, so that's why I like started this website. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. JewsAgainstPlastic.com. Because fundamentally this is like against the law. And divine law, as I've said before, supersedes the law of men. So every time you go to the store, what you're seeing at the grocery store, the convenience store, is idolatry. So one last thought, and this is what this like fundamentally taught me, is that, okay, so if I didn't believe this was all going on, okay, if I didn't have the belief, if I didn't have faith, I wouldn't have engaged with it and acted on faith, you know, and taken the vow. And then this affects our thoughts. Like, so this affects how we think. And our thoughts are our words. It's what we speak. And it's also how we act, too. And this drew my attention to this. Yeah. So by having belief and acting on faith, my attention was drawn to this. And that changed my words, and that changed my actions. And by following this, I'm hoping that we will be able to change outcome, right? But it all goes back to this. Like, if this is incorrect, then this is incorrect, and then this is wrong, and this is wrong. Your attention's on the wrong thing. And then our actions are wrong, and then we go someplace else that we shouldn't have been. Like making little plastic figurines in containers. Or television, right? Because we don't act on this, we get TV, a graven image. And there's some scripture that I want to read for you guys to go along with all this. And this is, those that are demonic do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. They say that this world is unreal, that there is no foundation, and that there is no God in control. It is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Following such conclusions, the demonic are lost in themselves, and who have no intelligence engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. Like TV. And you can watch that on my other episode, where I talk about the second commandment in television. And that's that quote is from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verses 7 through 9. And I keep on bringing this up because this quote from the Gita, I would say just like very succinctly describes the problems in this place, is that the pleasures that arise from contact with the senses, the pleasures that arise from contact with the sense objects, though appearing as enjoyable to the worldly minded, are verily a source of misery. Such pleasures have a beginning and end, and wise people do not delight in them. So here's a sense object, and it appears enjoyable to the worldly minded, but really they're just like a source of misery. Right? Just a source of misery. And such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So yeah, people engage in horrible, unbeneficial works like this, like TV, right? Where it's just like producing temporary sense enjoyment, right? You watch TV, you get sensual pleasure out of it, but really it's just like destructive and just destroys the world. And it takes away your attention from other things that could be beneficial and could be good works. But instead we're paying tribute and we're worshiping television and people work on television. And because that's what people pay attention to, that changes their action, and then we get the wrong outcome, like global warming, ocean acidification. It's where we like go on a hill or a mountain and we strip mine the mountain or the hill, and that causes extinction of plants and animals, and dirties the environment because we're mining goods for TV and computers and electronics and stuff. Even though the Lord's like, no TV, I would say is the second commandment. No movies, no TV. And it goes along with this, right? Like, because we're not acting on this, we make this stuff, and then this stuff causes misery and suffering in the world. Because we don't know what good work is, and we don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Like, this is not to be done, and television is not to be done. And then to go back to like Christian scripture, to pair it with the Gita. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teachings, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and eating of food sacrificed to idols. So there's a website called Jezebel, and it misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. Right? Like, instead of gathering food and giving it to people, right? We gather food. Coca-Cola takes it in, right? They get money, they get worship paper, and we sacrifice food to the Coca-Cola company, right? Or McDonald's, or Burger King, or Pepsi, Steak and Shake, Wendy's, right? We're sacrificing food to idols. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through abundance of her delicacies. This is again Revelation 18, right? So merchants sell this stuff, right? Or Snickers, Kit Kat. When you go to the candy store, like, it's all wrapped and it all has labels, they all have different names, right? And people are getting rich off the sale of these products while destroying the earth. It goes back to the Gita. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine. So we see that with global warming, ocean acidification, plastic in the oceans. 50% of the animals are dead, 50% of the forests are gone. And that's the last 40 years. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her. Again, this is all Revelation 18. Yeah. And I like how that, is that an adjective or a verb? I don't know. But they use the word deliciously, right? So here's something delicious. And it's causing the destruction of the planet. And that goes back to the Gita 5:22, where the pleasures that arise from contact with the sense objects that are appearing as enjoyable to the worldly minded are the very source of misery. Yeah, so delicious, appearing enjoyable to the worldly minded, source of misery. So what we're doing is we're trading short-term sensual pleasure and its reactive behavior. So we're just reacting, and we get the short-term sense gratification, short-term sense pleasure, and by acting reactively, we're trading that for long-term chaos, global warming, ocean acidification, dead species of animals, forests are gone, unnecessary agriculture, plastic in the oceans. And we want to act proactively, right? And that requires us to momentarily strain and struggle and to not purchase the Coke can, the Mountain Dew can, right? Requires us to change. And to maybe say, we don't want the Coca-Cola company in our neighborhood, in our city. Which is difficult, right? That requires strain and struggle on our part, and denying ourselves of sensual pleasure temporarily for the good of all men and for the good of our health, right? Because when you drink this, you're increasing your chance of a heart attack, you're increasing your chance of obesity, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, right? That's the stuff. When you watch TV, you get that short-term gratification, right? Instant gratification, it makes you happy. But it causes depression, anxiety, contributes to obesity. Yeah. Instead of like going out with your friends, which requires momentary strain or struggle, to like go out and be like, oh hey, I want to meet up with my friends and like hang out with my friends. which is like the true source of happiness. You're sitting at home watching TV and getting the instant pleasure, coupled with long-term chaos. Yeah. So, that's the Nazarite. This, like, having engaged with this has, like, fundamentally, like, taught me this. Like, what we believe matters. Yeah. And what we believe can change outcome. Yeah. And what we believe can change the outcome. So let's believe the right thing.